Another day of NFL free agency is wrapped up, guys. What's up? It's Matt Morgan here, the ADP Average News Podcast. I'm going to go through some of the moves I didn't quite get a chance to yesterday, and then some of the moves that happened today as we had yet another very active day across the NFL with some teams adding on some players. Let's start out with my favorite team, the Baltimore Ravens, adding Derrick Henry to their backfield on a 2-year deal. The 30-year-old running back, as a Baltimore Ravens fan, don't love this. I don't think signing a 30-year-old running back is very good. I feel like we learned that in 2014, but here we are in 2024 doing it still. However, if anyone can make it work, and anybody can be an anomaly, Derrick Henry probably is that guy. But I would rather not bet on the anomaly happening, but that's where we are at with the Baltimore Ravens. The good news here for Derrick Henry is I think this is as good of a landing spot as you could possibly hoped. For his own personal fantasy value, I think that the Ravens run scheme is going to really help him out quite a bit. He gets to basically kind of just be a really, really more talented, bigger version of Gus Edwards. And we've seen how good Gus Edwards has been in this offense and how the skill set for the Ravens offense does not need to be the same skill set as others. I mentioned yesterday a little bit talking about DeAndre Swift going to the Bears, how this is really going to unlock his potential as a pass catcher in Chicago. Well, Derrick Henry's never caught passes, and Baltimore's not an offense where you need to catch passes. He's going to be a goal line back, he's going to be between the tackles back, and he gets to kind of get a lot of the pressure alleviated off of him because of Lamar Jackson. I think this is as good of a move as it can possibly be for Derrick Henry. Later on this week, I will have updated rankings for everybody, so keep me on the lookout for those. But I kind of expect Derrick Henry to be basically where I would have had him before free agency. I think this is probably the best landing spot for him. Let's go to another old running back here. Let's go to Austin Ekeler, signing with the Washington Football Red Commanders. And I don't love this one for him. I kind of feel like this is maybe just an upgrade over the Antonio Gibson role, which we all know has been very frustrating. Of course, new coaches in place. But I don't love it. I think that he would have been really good going to a team with a bit more high-octane offense. It's going to be a rookie quarterback in there. You've already got Terry McLaurin taking a lot of passes in this offense, and Brian Robinson's going to be taking a ton of the rushing work. Not that Eckler's a guy who needs rushing work, but I kind of feel like you need the touchdown opportunities for Austin Ekeler to rebound. I think at this point, the ship has sailed on him ever being a true RB1 again, but can he be a RB2 PPR reliant back? That could be in the cards, but it's not a bet I'm going to want to make. I actually think Brian Robinson could be a little interesting coming out of this if his value does get diminished a bit by having a big name in the backfield alongside him. Since we're talking about the Washington backfield, let's talk about the guy who left town there, Antonio Gibson. I was kind of hopeful for Gibson to land somewhere that could be a little bit fun. Quite frankly, LA, right? If he could just replace Antonio Gibson, or if he could replace Austin Ekeler out there, I thought that could have been interesting for him. He goes to New England. Not a very fun and exciting place for sure. One of these two backs is probably going to have Jaden Daniels as their quarterback between Ekeler and Gibson. So that's going to take away even more pass catching opportunities for one of these two guys. We'll see which one it is and kind of how that shakes out with the draft here in just a couple months. But yeah, no, that's not going to be great for either one of those guys. Another guy probably going to have a rookie quarterback. They did sign Jacoby Brissett today, but I don't really expect him to be the starter. Maybe he's a bridge guy to get to that rookie, plays the first few games. That could happen there, but Gibson, not very excited. Let's talk about a running back who is a little bit more exciting, though. That's Zack Moss. He goes to Cincinnati. Cincinnati then ships Joe Mixon to Houston. So let's break down both sides. Let's start with Zack Moss first, going to Cincinnati. Great opportunity for a great workload there. It does feel a little trappy, though, as we've seen this before. Kind of middling free agent running back signs to a rather team-friendly kind of deal, and we kind of just anoint him. Oh, well, he's going to get workload, and then he's not very good with it, and a younger player takes that spot. So Chase Brown, I think, moves up for me as a handcuff here. Zack Moss, I think you're going to have to assume that he's going to get a big workload at the moment. However, I could definitely also see that workload going away very quickly if he's not very good. And as good as he was with Jonathan Taylor out for a little bit last year, we've got a lot of Zack Moss just kind of being a plotter and not being great. Chase Brown definitely becomes a bit of a guy who I become a bit more interested in. Let's talk about the Joe Mixon side of that equation. Now he goes to Houston. Very exciting for Joe Mixon. He was going to get cut, and then Houston swooped in and said, well, we'll just call dibs on it, and we'll send you a pick to get him. And I think it's a great spot for Joe Mixon to be in. Dameon Pierce becomes his only competition in that backfield. It doesn't worry me too much. Pierce kind of slots in there as a handcuff option there. But for Mixon, it's an opportunity to basically just be in a very similar situation what he was in Houston or in Cincinnati. The running back, the lead back for a high-scoring offense. And that's a really, really good opportunity to have if you're Joe Mixon. Look, Devin Singletary, not the most impressive runner in the world, and he just had a really nice stretch of value this past season. So Joe Mixon, I think, pretty well holds his value through this whole thing, despite moving on from the Bengals. Speaking of Devin Singletary, it's funny, we had this whole musical chairs at running back this offseason because of some of these guys being available. Let's talk about Devin Singletary then, who he goes to the New York Giants, replacing Saquon Barkley, who's now in Philadelphia. You can check that out from yesterday. So Devin Singletary to the Giants. This is going to be one of those guys who gets a lot of work but doesn't get to do a whole lot with it. Saquon Barkley, because he is just so good, was kind of able to make chicken salad out of chicken poop. I don't love the situation in New York. It's not a very good offense. They're not going to score a lot. They're not going to throw the ball to the running back very much. And so that puts Devin Singletary kind of in... A guy like, I guess Chuba Hubbard is maybe a pretty good comparison for kind of where I feel I'll be with Devin Singletary, except Hubbard does have Sanders there, at least taking some of it. I don't love that situation. You know, if you're a running back and you're not catching passes and you're not scoring touchdowns, what are you really doing for me? You know, and so that's where I'm going to kind of be, I think, with Devin Singletary. Another guy changing places yesterday in kind of a similar situation, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones. So yesterday when I recorded, the story was out that Josh Jacobs was signing with Green Bay. Now at that point in time, Josh Jacobs was going to stick around in Green Bay. Aaron Jones was going to stick around in Green Bay. And then it came out they're going to cut Aaron Jones. He then becomes a free agent. He gets shipped up to Minnesota. So following the footsteps of what feels like so many Green Bay Packers, of going from the Packers up to the Vikings. Greg Jennings definitely being one of the first ones that comes to mind. Brett Favre, of course, the Jets stay in there, but I feel like a lot of Packers end up in Minnesota. And Aaron Jones, the latest one to do that. I'm not going to be in on Aaron Jones. I've kind of been penciling in the Vikings running back as kind of a dead spot to me. Was nervous they were going to draft one of these highly rated guys, or highest they can be rated with this class, in the draft this year. To me, it's just not an offense that really bodes much for runners, and Jones at his age is not something I'm really all that interested in. Also, they got a new quarterback. We'll touch on that in just a second here, and that gives me a lot of hesitation for what this offense is going to be in 2024. One more running back I do just want to touch on is Gus Edwards. Love the Gus bus, and so does Greg Roman. And so Gus Edwards heading to the LA Chargers. This is probably the easiest one to predict in the entire world. It's an inexpensive backup running back contract to send him to the Chargers. It does make me think that they'll draft a running back for sure, one who will be the lead back, and then Gus can be just a reliable set of hands in that backfield for his 8 to 10 touches per game. Let's talk real quick about wide receiver because there's just no wide receiver news at all. Darnell Mooney, really the only one to sign. Yesterday we had Gabe Davis go off the board. You can check that one out here too. But Darnell Mooney going to Atlanta, to me, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to have happen, where it's a guy who at least is something on that side of the field in order to kind of keep defenses honest. It helps Kirk Cousins out a little bit, but it's not a guy who I'm worried about getting in the way of either Pitts or London. And so it's kind of the best of all worlds. And it's also a guy where, unfortunately, this is fantasy football. This is unfortunately the way kind of things go. You have to prepare for injuries do occur. And he's a guy where if something were to happen to Pitts or to London, I think Darnell Mooney is a guy who could step in and have some real potential then as one of the higher up options in the offense. Not saying he'd be great and amazing. It's not going to be Jordan Addison of last year. but he's a guy who could have some flex appeal, even some wide receiver 2 in the right matchups. Kirk Cousins being his quarterback, of course, is going to help that out as well. And for Kirk, this is also really good. You know, it wasn't that long ago in Minnesota where we saw Kirk Cousins really making hay with a lot of weapons, and at least this solidifies one other spot in a spot where he will have a weapon. So that's really, really good for him. The last thing I do want to talk about, mentioning Kirk Cousins, got to go back to the Minnesota Vikings here. Sam Darnold does sign on as quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. This to me is about as disappointing as it can be for a starting quarterback, for a bridge quarterback, which I'm sure this is. You know, this is simply a placeholder for a rookie. I think probably J.J. McCarthy. And it's disappointing, though. Jameis Winston is really the kind of guy I wanted it to be. He signs with Cleveland as a backup behind Deshaun Watson. Gardner Minshew signs on with the Las Vegas Raiders. He's going to compete there with Aiden O'Connell, and then who knows, maybe they go get a quarterback as well in this draft. So, or Justin Fields just totally usurps that. That's most likely. But Sam Darnold in Minnesota, it gives me a lot of pause on Justin Jefferson, because he is Justin Jefferson. And this is the kind of thing that, man, we are literally, it is mid-March. We're not making decisions here, right? I've got a whole summer to go back and forth on Justin Jefferson, but this is the kind of thing that can happen that makes me think to myself, CeeDee Lamb wide receiver 1. And CeeDee Lamb in PPR redraft is CeeDee Lamb first overall now, because if Sam Darnold is your guy for 6 weeks at most, let's say it's 6 weeks of Sam Darnold, man, those are 6 weeks where there's a chance that Justin Jefferson is even in trouble. So that's very concerning. Jordan Addison, I think for dynasty purposes, if you're rebuilding, this is a great chance to target him. And for Jefferson too, right, for dynasty purposes. It's a pretty short-term situation with Darnold. However, for those redraft leagues, which that's the primary source of fantasy football, Sam Darnold for any amount of time is not a good thing for your wide receivers, no matter who you are. I think that checks all of my boxes as far as the free agents I need to hit on. There are just a couple of them still kind of hanging out there. Most are gone at this point, but really the wide receivers. It's kind of weird to see running backs flying off the board like this. Meanwhile, Hollywood Brown and Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd are all kind of still waiting at home for those phone calls, get their paycheck. So that will do it, guys. I'm sure tomorrow there will be moves as well. I'll make another quick little video just like this one, going through all of those and kind of the circumstances that come out of it. What has been your favorite landing spot so far? For me, I think it's probably Derrick Henry landing with the Ravens, because if Derrick Henry went anywhere else, I'd be very concerned. So I think for me, that's my favorite landing spot of the guys today. What's your favorite landing spot, though? Let me know in the comments down below, and we will see you all next time.